Hey guys, it's Infinity Break. I'll make this little intro part real quick so you guys can get to the real video. Just want to say thank you so much for all the views I got on my theory video, and I hope all of you who subbed and liked it are going to stick around for the long haul here. I plan on making YouTube kind of a major thing in my life at the moment, as I feel like I'm enjoying myself right now. So thank you all for watching and sticking around. I hope you guys enjoy your stay and that more of you join this little corner of the internet that I seem to be making at the moment. Anyway, on to the video. Okay, so I wanted to talk today about a topic that's not relatively new to the Fallout community or Bethesda community at that, and it has to do with Bethesda's handling of the Fallout franchise, as I think we've all noticed something, or at least noticed this kind of thing since Fallout 3, and we also noticed it again in Fallout New Vegas, mostly because of the lack of Bethesda when it came to that game. So I think I wanted to talk about it today, as I kind of was noticing this as I was playing Fallout 4 earlier, and I kind of wanted to just, sit down and talk about it and see if you guys found it interesting as well. Now, of course, you may be wondering, Infinity, what the heck are you talking about? Unless you read the title, in which case you may have a good idea, I don't know. But what I'm here to talk about today is what Bethesda seems to not understand, or what they seem to get wrong about the Fallout franchise as a whole. Because as I've noticed them with the games they have made with 3 and 4, and even their lack of, kind of involvement in New Vegas, which was really well received, I've noticed something that I'm pretty sure some people have noticed, but I don't think anybody's really pointed out before that I kind of wanted to bring up. What I'm talking about is, of course, Bethesda and how, in my opinion, they don't really seem to get the whole theme and feel and narrative of the Fallout franchise as a whole. They get the general idea. It's a post-apocalyptic RPG that has some wacky and crazy moments, but for the most part, it's that they don't seem to understand what kind of things the fans really enjoy from these kind of games, like the story, and how I suppose you could say that some of the side quests and how the world kind of comes together. The whole feel of the world, I suppose you can say. Because if we look at 3 and we look at 4, there are some issues. And don't get me wrong, they did a really good job. I mean, especially with 3, building up an entirely new, kind of combat system with VATS and the guns and how they work in general. But for the most part, they always seem to fall behind narratively. And they always seem to get certain aspects and factions and characters wrong, in my opinion. For example, we kind of have to look at the whole idea of, Fallout 3 and how they kind of got that wrong. In Fallout 3, the whole point of the game is that you are a vault dweller from Vault 101, and your vault went through some crazy crisis because your dad left. You had to find your dad, and you have to basically figure out what he's doing, and you find out he's trying to fix a water purifier that can help the wasteland out. Because if you played Fallout 3, you know that water is basically a very, very lucky commodity if you have it. There is no clean water. It's all dirty, irradiated, bacteria-filled, dirt, and all this nonsense just strewn throughout it. There is no clean water to drink. And that's an issue. So your father, obsessed with kind of going back out and fixing this, essentially gathers the attention of the Enclave and even he recruits, the help of the Brotherhood of Steel. And it kind of is this really nice idea overall when you look at it like that. But when you look at it, kind of under a microscope, you kind of see the cracks in their whole, story. Especially when it comes to the Brotherhood and it comes to the Enclave. What I mean is that the Enclave, for example, is a huge far cry from what they are in Fallout 2.
A little history. There was a great war, long before we were born. Our gallant soldiers fought from the Yukon to the Yangtze.
You've gotten a lot farther than you should have. But then you haven't met Frank Horrigan either.
Oh, you a wise guy, huh? Look, I'm tracing you right now, pal. We'll see how smart you feel with internal security all over your freaking ass.
The truth is, you lost an expensive piece of Army-issue equipment. That suit is going to come out of your pay, and you will remain in this man's army until you are 510 years old, which is the number of years it will take for you to pay for a Mark II powered combat armor you have lost. Report to the armory and have a new suit issued to you, then report back to me, Private. Dismissed!
They were supposed to be this idea of the old world government coming back after they had made all these mistakes and trying to repossess what they own. While technically, if you looked at it through like the eyes of what Shoddy Cast and all that said, it is technically their land, but the idea is that the wasteland is already, starting to recover ever so slightly, and settlements are starting to form up and all that. People are starting to get organized again, and the Enclave is coming back through and basically just killing everybody for the sake of trying to take back their land, because everybody on it is mutated and they consider everybody impure, and all this mumbo jumbo about just them trying to take back America and be patriots and all that nonsense.
Never. Part of the president's job is to make the tough decisions. A lot of near-humans will sacrifice their lives for the return of humanity. Humans will prevail.
When it was their fault in the first place that the bombs even fell, and why the world is the way it is. And the Enclave doesn't change that much in Fallout 3. It primarily stays the same, as they seem to just want to stick around and take credit for Project Eden, which is the whole water purification thing that your father is trying to get underway. But they seem to have changed, at least when it came to their charm, their charisma, their whole way of doing things. Their notable characters are mostly gone, excluding their president, John Henry Eden.
America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves.
And I mean, that's really it. John Henry Eden's the only character. The general's an asshole. All the characters that are in their army are just completely static background cannon fodder. There's no real chance to join them or become attached to them like you were in Fallout 2. And in Fallout 3, they're just basically this stereotypical bad guy. And it kind of removes a lot of the, attachment that you had to the Enclave in Fallout 2, as you had chances to join them, to see the different colored characters that were throughout their ranks and all that. The generals, the people over the intercoms, Frank Horgan, the president. It was a lot more endearing when it came to the idea of, them as a faction actually being human and having a plan rather than just being these, we're the bad guys in this story kind of situation, And if we look at the Brotherhood's no better. They were basically turned into the good guys of the story to counteract the Enclave being the bad guys. This is the problem with the narrative there. Fallout was never a struggle when it came to good versus bad. It was the fact that factions were popping up. And I mean, I know in Fallout 1, you're kind of dealing with the Master, who is technically a bad guy if you want to look at it, because his ideology is flawed. But there were different ways about going about him. At the end of Fallout 3, there really isn't any other option besides starting up Liberty Prime, walking throughout Washington, D.C., and just going to the Enclave's base and just destroying it. Or not even the base, Raven Rock was destroyed, but you basically walk up to the water purifier and you say, hey, this is ours. There is no other option. You can't really talk anybody out of anything, except for the general. I guess you can kind of convince him to just kind of surrender. But even then, it's just kind of like the same, a means to an end. There is no different endings. It's you do this, and that's it. And as we move forward, we move on to Fallout New Vegas, which is a very critically acclaimed title, a very big fan favorite to any huge Fallout fan. This game is very popular when it comes to the name Fallout. And I really enjoy it myself, as I see a lot of what Obsidian, the original developers of Fallout, or at least some of Obsidian's people came from Black Isle, and they went to Obsidian and they got a chance to work on a Fallout game, which is good. So they understand what the Fallout narrative is about. What Obsidian did right in this game is they brought back the original feel, the original kind of, I suppose you could say, tone with each of the characters. They brought a lot of character back to the characters, I guess. And it's interesting to think about it because the original creators come back, and of course they're going to get it right. But then you compare it to Fallout 3, and you see where Bethesda kind of loses itself in its own translation. Fallout 3 was a passion project that they wanted to do very badly, and they worked very hard on it, and I respect Bethesda for at least attempting to try and get the formula right. Fallout 3 is a good game. I've played it extensively. Its DLCs were amazing, and I think, while the ending and everything is kind of iffy, and the bad guy, good guy versus narrative is kind of not that great, I still think the world itself was built up properly. I just think that they get the whole main story aspect wrong. And again, comparing Fallout 3 to Fallout New Vegas, just one more time, and I'll stop comparing the two and move on to Fallout 4. Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas' endings are severely different, as New Vegas' ending feels like you built up towards it. You didn't just go from one point to the other and get strewn along a path that was predetermined. You felt like you did your own thing. You decided what you wanted to do. You were the center focal point of the narrative. And you weren't just living out a story, you were creating your own story. And that's what I think Bethesda seems to get wrong, honestly. It's not just a story we play through. And I mean, Fallout 1, sure, if you look at that, it was a story you kind of played through. But in Fallout 2, which was the apex of the series, at least when Black Isle was doing it, they had a lot more choice, a lot more freedom. You felt like you were in control, and that was good. And I don't feel like Bethesda seems to get that as they look back towards the very basics of Fallout, and they don't seem to quite grasp what New Vegas did right. It was the whole idea that everything you did actually mattered. Every little faction, every little group of people out in the wasteland that you assisted, that you got on your side, actually kind of mattered at the end. There were factions like the Boomers that showed up at the final battle and did bombing runs and stuff, because you actually went out of your way to assist them and turn their generators and stuff back on. It's also because of things like the Enclave that were little Easter eggs that actually did something cool. They showed up at the end and helped you out if you actually went through the effort of gathering them all up. They showed up in a vertibird with the most powerful power armor to help you fight the final boss. It was really cool to see things like the Brotherhood of Steel and the Followers of the Apocalypse actually had an ending at the end that kind of factored into the future of Vegas. And I feel like in 3, all you did was decide who kind of went in, whether you rejected or you actually ended up going through with this idea of sacrifice or whatever that your dad had. And it isn't just a black and white, oh, you have to be with the Brotherhood or you have to fight the Enclave. That, it's much more than that. It was way better and it was way more thought out, in my opinion. And now to kind of wrap up, I kind of want to point out some of the flaws that Fallout 4 has and why it really embodies what Bethesda doesn't seem to get right about Fallout. Now, if we look at Fallout 4, I think we can all agree that it is probably one of the most advanced games in the franchise when it comes to mechanics. It takes a lot of the mods and little tweaks that a lot of the community put into Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3, and it gathers them all up and it puts them into Fallout 4, which is amazing. It actually Bethesda as a whole just managed to look at what their fans were doing, what their fans wanted, what their fans went through all the effort of putting into the games that were already out, and they decided, we're going to do that right off the bat. We're going to streamline the gameplay to the best of our ability. And they did a wonderful, wonderful job of doing that. That is what Bethesda gets right with the Fallout franchise. They get the gameplay right. They get the mechanics right. They get the graphics, which, I guess some people could say the graphics aren't that great, but I still think they get a lot of the world, the visuals, the color. They get that right. They take the criticisms of what they can, look and tweak at their game physically. They look at that and they just do it. There's no stopping for oh, well, maybe it would be easier if we didn't. They look at that and they add what they can in, which is why I respect Bethesda. I just don't think they understand the Fallout franchise narratively. Fallout 4, like I said, great example. They seem to really want to fix a lot of stuff, and they added more stuff in that just kind of messed it all up. Because in Fallout 4, all you do is you feel like a character that was, already made before you could get your hands on him. You had a story, a family, you had a son that you had to find, and the entire game, even going out and exploring, is all centered around you basically finding your son first, even though the game kind of wants you to go and explore its amazing, wonderful mechanics that added in, but the game is so focused on its narrative that it doesn't seem to quite understand just yet. That's, in my opinion, very flawed narrative, as you don't feel attached to any of the characters or anything. You have no real reason to care about this dude. You can't create your own character and make your own story. And all the endings are basically the same. It's just a matter of who you want to side with. And you don't really want to side with anybody except for maybe the Underground Railroad and all that. Because the Railroad is the only decent group of human beings. Again, they messed up the Brotherhood by making them a bunch of fanatics and crazy, I guess you could say, extremists. Because they're just a bunch of crazy people in a ship with a lot of power armor and weapons saying, oh, those damn synths, they're not human, they weren't born. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to side with you. And the Institute is just a bunch of well, pardon my language, but a bunch of assholes that live underground and just kind of dictate everything and abduct people and mess with everything as though everything's a giant science experiment. None of the characters are compelling. Everything's surrounded by synths, which no one really cares about. And at the end of the day, the endings, like I said, they're all the same. You blow up someone. There's like, I think, again, the only faction that actually manages to get something right is the Railroad, as you don't just blow up one, you blow up both of them. But that's seriously how it is. That's just how it is. It's just a shame, because Fallout 4, gameplay-wise, is an amazing game. That could have been great. But the narrative, if they can just understand Fallout, maybe get some of the old writers, maybe recruit some of the writers from Obsidian, pay them to help them write a story that's actually something that we would really care about, with factions that are really good and compelling, then maybe the next Fallout game would be great. But at the moment, that's the problem with Bethesda. They just need to get the narrative right. They have the gameplay down. They got that squared away. They need to get the narrative right. Okay guys, that's really it for this video, honestly. It is all I really wanted to talk about was this little topic, because I feel like it's something that I've noticed for a long time, and I just kind of wanted to point it out to you. See if I can get a discussion going down in the comments about whether you guys agree or disagree with it. If you like this, then go ahead and like it. Subscribe if you really want to. There's no pressure. And I just kind of want to point out that there really isn't any, hate from me towards Bethesda. I like Bethesda. I think they make good games. It's just, there's that problem with the whole, like I said, their narrative. It kind of pisses me off because Fallout 4 could have been so much better. Fallout 3 can be so much better. And at this point, Fallout 76 was a little bit of a disappointment. Not too much so, because I don't feel like I wasted all my money on it, but at the same time, I feel like it could have been better spent, I suppose. And there could have been just a lot more to make it better if there were just, NPCs and such in it that made the narrative feel better. But overall, I have to say that's really it. This has been Infinity Break, reminding you guys all to, say it with me now, eat well, play well, and live well, guys. And always remember to go out there and break infinity. Keep it here if you guys want to see more content on Fallout and Elder Scrolls and any other Bethesda discussions. Leave a comment down in the comment section if you want to see anything specifically, and thank you so much for watching.